Okay, so moving on, I think you've made the decision, hopefully, to buy your horse from a reputable person who, if you know one, you're very lucky. You're hoping that this person is going to be open in disclosing what is good and bad about the horse. Moving on to Patrick, in the vetting, what is the purpose of vetting your horse?
Georgie, I think it's, for me, the process starts long before you actually get to the horse's side. I have untold discussions with the buyer. I need to know what they want to do, what they're expecting,
Absolutely.
what level they're riding at. Do they know what the horse is doing at the moment? Have they checked the competition record? And once I know that, I've got an idea about what I need, how fine I call it, our mesh should be, and what I'm going to tolerate.
Oh, that's great.
For it to go through, and what isn't.
Yeah.
If the horse needs to walk around the block twice a week with a young kid sitting on it, well, then if it's got a cataract in a right eye, it's probably,
okay,
as an example, not the end of the world. If the horse needs to go and jump in the 150 classes, that's a different story. And then little anomalies can become exaggerated and trying to get that horse to that level. But if a horse is competing or hacking at a very lower level, then a lot more is tolerable. So for me, it's about knowing, it's so important to know before you get to the horse what this horse needs to do. I also, when I get to the horse, I will ask the owners, if the buyer, if they're there, preferably they're there, what the horse is doing, are they happy with the way the horse is going, why they're selling the horse. Always a few interesting stories there. One horse, I've read them all.
What's been your best reason for selling a horse?
Beware the daughter who's at university and why the horse is there.
Janine has a daughter at university, but there was a queue for your horse, to be fair.
So once you've established that, then you know immediately when you see the horse in front of you. And look, purchase price shouldn't come into it. You know, value is in the eye of the beholder, like beauty. It shouldn't, but it does, because that old saying that if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
So it's interesting, you're coming from having a low, and that is something that was in Marette's post, as she said, if you're getting a great deal, you definitely should look the gift horse in the mouth.
100%. No, I get very nervous. Just yesterday, I was asked to look at a horse, look at x-rays and my opinion on a horse in Europe. And I replied to the client that my nose was twitching. Something's not adding up there. So I shouldn't be so skeptical, but I found for some reason, I've ended up, as you say, I vet far too many horses. But it's a job I enjoy doing because the way I see it, it's a willing buyer, willing seller.
It's almost like veterinary CSI.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Well,
like
you shouldn't be such a pessimist, but I have to be sometimes. But you've got a willing buyer, willing seller, and I'm there to facilitate the sale. I'm not there to stand in the way of it.
You're like a mediator. You're there
exactly.
for the
I'm here
best
to
of
say,
everyone.
it's show me a reason why this horse shouldn't pass, not show me a reason why it should pass. And I do think sometimes we get a bit too caught up in clinical exams,
Fault finding,
particularly fault finding, and then obviously we discussed earlier flexion tests and x-rays.
So let's discuss quickly like the role that flexion tests and x-rays would play. And one of the analogies that spoke to my soul is if someone did a flexion test on me, I would be shot. So, you know, when someone explained it like that, I went, oh, well, maybe then, you know, are we investing too much in flexion tests?
I think it's all in the interpretation.
That's great. Yeah.
It's all in the interpretation. You must remember, we only have an hour and a half, probably max, at the horse's side. I have going to Port Elizabeth tomorrow to vet 2 horses. I only have probably an hour and a half at the horse's side to try and elicit it sounds terrible, any weakness out of the horse. I don't have the time to go and watch it compete last weekend before I vet it this week or whatever. So from that point of view, a judiciously done flexion test, we're not trying to lame the horse, we're just trying to stress the joints out and watch the horse trot out. If the horse trots out sound, that's fine. If the horse trots out a little bit off for a few strides, in my eyes personally, if everything else is fine, that's fine. And it's also, as I say, interpretation. If one flexion test is positive, but the other 3 are negative, immediately I start to get a little bit suspicious. Why because some horses are jointy and they'll go sore on all four legs.
Exactly.
And then I don't worry too much about that.
That's
Unless,
what-
you know,
yeah.
and I use it as a pointer. It's one piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It's not the deciding factor. I will always carry on a vetting if it has a positive flexion test. Invariably, if it has a significant positive flexion test, when you get to the ridden phase, it's probably going to start. If there's absolutely no lameness in the ridden phase, you've got to go back and question that flexion test and go, well, was that a real reading, or should I repeat that afterwards and go, actually, maybe I just caught the horse off
And
guard.
again, I think you know, when you say it's part of a holistic examination, a positive flexion test on maybe both front legs in an older horse that's done a lot of jumping is a very different thing to a 4-year-old. So,
Absolutely, 100%. So if I am flexing a 4-year-old and it goes off lame on one leg, and there's a little bit of a fetlock distension, I'd go, not ideal.
Okay.
But if I'm vetting a horse that's jumping in the 130s, 140s, and it's 12 years old, it's probably going to be feeling a bit, and I'm not going to overinterpret those flexion tests.
Okay.
So it goes back to what I said at the beginning. You need to know what's standing in front of you and how to interpret the X-rays. It's the same with X-rays. You know, if you've got significant changes on X-rays in a young horse, you have no record to judge that horse against and whether he's going to stand up to work. If you see subtle change in a 12-year-old that's jumping in the 140s, you know the horse is coping with that. So you're far more tolerant of that. You're like, he's coping with that. It's probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, again, the X-rays, occasionally you will look at, if I don't see the horse in front of me, I much prefer, but obviously sometimes I see X-rays from Europe, but I don't have the horse in front of me. And one tends to err on the side of caution because you can't see the
No,
horse.
totally.
But if I'm trotting the horse up and down, I know the horse's record and I know everything. I trust the seller. I might know the seller, might even be a client of mine, and I know the horse, then I'm likely to tolerate a lot more.
Okay.